Matt here. In this video, I'm going to go through step 2 in our process to create a new budget, which is covering your obligations. So in step 1, we made a list of all the accounts that we have and we figured out how much budgetable money we have. And we also made sure to list the accounts we will spend from so we can track where our money is going in the future. In this step, we're going to start writing out what are the things we're going to spend money on, and specifically, what are the things that we have to spend money on. So what we're going to do in this step is basically create spending categories, which is just a term for a row in a spreadsheet or just something that captures a thing we need to spend our money on. We're going to get as many of those obligations as possible, and we're going to then work to cover them from our available spending money. So this is what we calculated in step 1. And our obligations will include anything that we need to get through a month or a year. So if we were to have a situation where we had to cut down all of our spending to just our basic living costs, these would be it. So this will include your monthly bills, specifically things like utilities that you can't avoid, your rent or mortgage payment, insurance, which is more could be more of a year or 6 months or a year payment, taxes, which are typically yearly, and then your essentials, which are like your day-to-day spending, food, clothing, pet supplies. Again, anything you need and absolutely have to have to get through a month or year. You also want to include your loan payments and your minimum monthly payments on credit cards if you're not paying the full balance. It's okay if you're not everybody can. So if you are making those smaller payments on the credit cards, you want to include a spending category for those. You're also going to want to include a spending category for interest, which we'll probably talk about in a later video, but interest will be something you have to pay. So that's something you want to capture in your budget as well. You don't necessarily have to do it right now, but at some point you will want to start capturing that because it will be a charge on your credit card. Loan payments, of course, you have to make those. So whatever your payment is for your loan would be captured here as well. You can also start to consider grouping categories together. Again, if you're doing this on your own in a spreadsheet, it's totally up to you how you would handle this. If you're using a tool like YNAB or you need a budget, uh, it does default to category groupings. So you may want to think about how you'd like those to look. This is just a way to find them more easily or just visualize them in a way that makes more sense to you. So a couple of examples I have here are maybe doing it by the type of spending. So maybe it's a bill, it's a frequent expense, or it's an irregular expense. Or maybe you'll do it more time-based where you have your monthly expenses, your non-monthly expenses, your future expenses. It's just up to you how you like to see that. I've changed it multiple times in my budget, so it's certainly not anything that's set in stone when you do this, but it might help to just think about how you visualize spending or how you like to look at spending. Don't overthink it. It's okay if nothing comes to mind right away. Again, if you're using a budgeting tool, it will probably have a basic starting point for you, but it's just something to consider at this point. But again, don't make it so that it will stop you from budgeting. You want to start budgeting, but it's just something that you can consider as you're starting to add these categories. So a couple tips for step 2. If you're having trouble remembering what your obligations are, I mean, most people can remember their monthly obligations, or at least the majority of them. But if you're having some trouble, you can always go download a statement from your bank or just log into your bank and look at your transaction history. That will usually jog your memory as far as what your obligations are. And it will, if you go into all of your spending accounts, you will literally see all of your transactions. So you should be able to capture every obligation you have, at least on a monthly level. When it comes to non-monthly obligations, these can be a little more difficult, especially if they haven't happened recently. So try to get the big ones like your insurance or your taxes. Those are some more obvious ones that we know we have to pay every year. You can check emails if you get reminder emails about yearly things, or you can check some older bank statements if your bank offers that. I know sometimes it's like you can get 3 months or something, but hopefully you have a bank that lets you download more than that and you can go farther back if you need to. You probably won't get this exactly right when you set your budget up. I know I did not. I had to come back and I had to add more things as time went on, things that I forgot. I think I mentioned before a passport. That one totally caught me off guard, but to renew a passport, that comes up every like 5 to 7 years or something. So sometimes those are tough to remember, and you can always come back and add more later. Similar to the category groups, it's also up to you how granular you want to make your categories. So for things like utilities, it's pretty simple. You're just going to have a line for your electric bill, your gas bill, your water bill. those are pretty straightforward. But when you get to something like groceries or essentials, some people like to think of that all as one. So if you buy food that you're going to eat or cook, or soap that you're going to use, or paper products that you're going to use, some people like to just think that's all just one big group. That's just your home essentials. You need those every month. Others like to split those up. They want to see how much am I spending on groceries, consumables, things I'm eating? How much am I spending on napkins and paper towels? How much am I spending on shampoo, soap, toothpaste? They like to see those split up. So if you break them up like that, it does give you a little more insight on your spending. So you can see if you're concerned that you're overspending in one of those areas, you can see that in your budget as time goes on. However, it does mean that you might have to do some more work if you buy these things in the same place, which a lot of people do. A lot of people buy their groceries and their paper towels in the same place. So if you're okay with splitting a bill in your budget and making sure the right amount goes to each category, then that might be a good option for you. If that sounds like a chore, my suggestion would be, unless you think that you're overspending in one of those areas, just make it a universal category for those types of items. Maybe call it like groceries and essentials in this example, and just do it that way at first. Make it, it's always err on the side of simpler at first, and then you can go more granular if you have to. This especially comes into play when if you shop at places like Amazon or Target. It might not be groceries, it could be a different type of category, but you're often buying a lot of different things there. So you have many different categories that you might need to capture. So the more granular you make your budget, the more work you're going to have to do when you buy from places like that. And the simpler you make your categories, the less you have to do that. But of course, the less insight you're going to get on exactly how you're spending. So there's a long-winded way of saying just consider how you'd like to look at your spending categories. Do you want to see everything, or are you okay with just something a little more summarized? Again, it's not set in stone. You can always change this, but it's just something to think about as you get started with this. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. I'm going to switch over now into YNAB, and I'll show you what this process would look like in just when you're getting started with a new budget. Okay, so I have YNAB open here. I'm using the same starter budget that I used in step one. I did flesh things out a little bit more, so I added a few more accounts on the left-hand side here. So I added another checking and savings account, I added another credit card, and then I added a few loans that we have in this imaginary example. And so when all of this happens, the cash that I have here in these three accounts is rolled up right here, and that's going to be reflected at the top of my budget here. When I'm starting, it will tell me my ready to assign is the exact amount that I have in those three accounts. That's because I haven't assigned any money yet. So all my money is ready to assign, and I can start putting that into my spending categories. My credit cards and my loans do not count against this amount, again, because this is not money that has left my account. I do owe this money, but it hasn't left any of my accounts. So technically, I still have that money available to put toward things. I should put some of it toward these things, these loans and these credit card bills, but it's up to me to decide how to use that money. So if you're using a spreadsheet or a do-it-yourself tool, you won't have any spending categories yet, and you will need to create these. If you're using a budgeting tool like YNAB, it will create a template for you that just has some basic categories in it. Like you'll see here, it has some bills, it has frequent expenses, non-monthly expenses, quality of life or like discretionary type expenses, and then it has a few goals. Now, most people won't be able to look at this and say, okay, that covers everything in my life. I'm good to go. So we will be making changes to this, but it does give you a place to start. And it's hoping that by seeing some of these categories, it will get you brainstorming and thinking about what you need. One other thing that a tool like YNAB does is when you put the credit cards in, it automatically creates a spending category for those credit cards. So you will have a place to assign money to make those payments, which we'll need to do as part of our obligations. And of course, when we have loans like this, we will also need a category for each of these to capture our monthly payment on these loans. Okay, so I'm going to go through just one category group here. I'm going to go with the bills, which is probably the most straightforward. And I'll show you what it looks like to add some categories. It's not terribly exciting. You're basically just typing in the name of the category. That's really all you're doing here. So I'll show you how I would do that for the bills, and I'll just simulate it like it was some things I'm doing from month to month. And hopefully that will make sense and you can do it for the rest. But it's the same process across the entire budget. So I'll just start here with bills. And if I start looking at this, I would say, yes, I do have a mortgage payment. And so I can go ahead and just click on this category to bring up the menu here and I can rename it. And then I can click OK to save that. I also have an electric bill each month. I have a water bill each month. I have an internet bill and I have a cell phone bill, which we pay on a yearly basis, but I still consider this a bill. So I would keep it here rather than in the non-monthly. So this is a good start, but it does not capture everything for me. So up here by the category group name, there's a blue circle or purple, whatever they call it, the circle with the plus. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a new category here. And we also have natural gas in our home. So we will have a natural gas bill. So I'll go ahead and put that by the electric. So when you add the category, it's pretty simple. And when you want to move a category, you just click and drag it. It's very natural as far as how you manipulate this. If you're working in a spreadsheet, you'll just be adding rows to your spreadsheet to capture the spending categories. And of course, depending on what you're using, you can usually click and drag and move those around as well. So we also have a sewage utility that we have to pay. So I'll add that category and I will move that down with my utilities. I'm going to add in my insurance as a bill as well. Now, this is one where you could think about whether, when we're talking about the category groups, I'm putting this in bills because I do consider it a bill. But this is definitely an area where you could think that, well, I don't pay this monthly, and I want my bills to be my monthly payments. So maybe I'm going to drag this one down into my non-monthly. I want that to be down here because I don't pay this monthly, and I really want my bills category group just to be my monthly bills. Again, this is up to you. It's not, there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just the way you like to visualize this. For me personally, I consider this a bill. This is like an obligation, something I cannot get out of. I have no choice in the matter. So it's something that has to be here. So I'm putting that in my bills, but you could easily put that in your non-monthly or elsewhere. I'm also going to put our property taxes here because that I consider that a bill as well, even though it's yearly. Again, you could easily put this in non-monthly if you like. That's totally fine. But I'm going to keep it in my bills. And then one more I'm going to add here is Apple One, which we pay for. We use this as file and photo backup. And so I know it includes like TV and news and music and whatever, but I really look at this as a storage backup primarily. So I consider it one of our utilities. So I will add it here as though it's a utility. For me, if we were to cut down to our bare bones living expenses, this would be the last thing to go. I would do what I could to keep this on the list. If we absolutely had to, of course, we could cut it, but I would consider this as we would have to be in complete dire straits to remove this one. Having a backup service like that to me is very important. So I'm going to consider it a utility and a bill. It's part of our obligations. Now, if this is looking pretty boring to you, not the process. I mean, adding spending categories is interesting because you're thinking about your life and what you spend money on. But if the look of this is not terribly exciting, one thing that a lot of people do, and I know that YNAB I think recommends this, is you can use emojis to spice these up a little bit if you like to see like a little bit of visual differentiation. And I do this actually in our budget. I like to see the emojis here just to make things look a little bit different. So not everything's exactly the same. So that's something you can consider just to make it look a little bit more interesting or make it a little bit easier to find things. Um, I recommend it, not necessary, but I do recommend it just to give a little bit of life to your budget. That's really the process there, at least what we're doing for right now. We're just going to add categories to our budget in whatever groups we like. And we're going to do that until we feel confident that we've covered all of our monthly and yearly obligations that we have to pay. And then from there, we're going to start to assign money. So I'm going to continue and add additional categories here. And then I'm going to come back and we'll go through what it would look like to start assigning that money to these obligations. Okay, so I went ahead and added some additional obligations. I won't go through all of them here, but you'll see I added some to my frequent expenses. I added things like haircuts, first aid, and pet supplies. Haircuts are debatable. Could I cut them? Yes, I could. Of course, if we were really strapped, we could not get haircuts. But generally speaking, we're probably going to need a haircut or two. We could maybe do this at home. it's debatable. But I'm going to put it in here as something that we're kind of obligated to pay, but certainly it's up to us if we 100% needed to do it. First aid, we're almost always going to have a couple of little things throughout the year that happen. Need some medicine, need some whatever to just get through a bit of an illness or something. So I'm going to include that there as an obligation. Again, these are kind of up to interpretation if you would consider that an obligation or not. Pet supplies, of course, are we have pets, we have to buy their supplies. Non-monthly, I added gutter cleaning, and I wanted to point this out as a little bit of a distinction. So yes, that could be considered home maintenance. We have a lot of trees. We have to clean our gutters or we're going to have some serious problems. So to me, because the gutter cleaning is a very specific thing with a price that I know, or at least I know very close to what we would pay for that, I like to call that out as its own category. And this gets back to the granular versus grouped categories. For this, I want to see it separately. And the similar situation is for tires for our car. I know I'm going to have to buy tires. I have a rough idea how much that's going to cost. I want to see that as a separate category in my budget. If you're okay saying tires are part of auto maintenance, which they are, then that's fine. Just leave it as auto maintenance. If you consider cleaning your gutters or maintaining your air conditioner or furnace, or if you have other devices in your house that need to be maintained, and you don't want to see those as separate items, you don't think that adds any value, just keep it as home maintenance. There's nothing wrong with that. So I just wanted to point that out as just one of these areas where everyone has a different take on it. This is the way I like to do it, but you may not like that and you want to do something different. It's completely fine, and you can always change this. That's what's great about it. I added school supplies, and then I wanted to come down to the bottom here and talk about funds. So for me personally, funds are an obligation as far as I'm concerned. We need to have a fund for potential medical expenses, dental expenses, veterinary expenses, and a job loss potential. So for me in YNAB, I'm going to create a new category group right here. And this is how you do it. Just up at the top, there's category group. You can give it a name. I'm going to call this funds. And you know what? Just to be more specific, I think I'm going to call it emergency funds. So I'm going to click that name and I'm going to call it emergency funds. And just like categories, you can click and drag this. I'm going to go ahead and put that at the bottom. These are things I hope I never spend money on, but I may possibly have to. So I'm going to add medical. I'm going to add dental. I'm going to add veterinary, and I'm going to add job loss. So I have categories now for, again, if I couldn't put money toward these in a month, I would be okay, right? As long as none of these things happened, if I didn't put the money toward these, things will be okay. We can get through the month. We won't, have a creditor calling us, or nothing like that is going to happen. However, I consider these obligations because these can and potentially will happen. And so I feel that I'm obligated to put some money toward them each month to make sure we have some money set aside for those. Okay, I'm going to do one last thing here that I didn't do, which is I said that we have a mortgage payment, but we don't have a matching loan on the left side. So I'm going to add that loan, and then we'll come back and start assigning money. Okay, so I went ahead and added a mortgage loan for this. I am wondering if maybe have a little bit too many loans here to actually cover in my example budget, but we'll go through and just walk through an example of what you would do at this point. So we have $3,252.92 to assign, and I'm going to do my best to cover all of these obligations. As we're sitting right now, it's early-ish September, so it's okay if I cannot cover every single thing in my budget right now. I may have to wait for a paycheck at a later point in the month to cover bills that I'll pay later in the month. That's fine. Or things like the funds that I mentioned, I don't have to fund those at a specific time within the month. So those are okay to wait until the end if I don't have the money right now to assign. So we'll just walk through an example of how I do this. Again, it's just like adding categories. It's really not very difficult, but I'll just show you an example of what you would be doing here. So let's start at the top with credit card payments. So I have two credit cards, one with a slightly higher balance, and then one with a just kind of a medium balance there. But let's say for now, I'm not sure exactly how much I want to pay off on these. I'm not paying the full balance. So I'm just going to be a little bit conservative here and say that I know my monthly payment for the Wells Fargo account is $70. And for the Capital One, it's going to be $35. And I'm going to put that aside for those right now. Okay, for my mortgage, I know that my payment every month is $597. So I'll put that in there. And when you have a loan like this in YNAB, you do have the option to link it to a specific category. So I could pair this with a plan category. And if I click on that, I can now click on my mortgage. And basically what that means is when I make a payment and I categorize, or I'm sorry, when I add a transaction and categorize it as mortgage, it will automatically pay toward this account and reduce the balance that I owe. And it will actually calculate the interest if I know the interest rate, and it will take that into account as well. We're not really getting into that right now, but I just wanted to point it out as how these things interact with each other if you're using YNAB. Okay, when it comes to utilities, I don't know all of my utility amounts personally every single month. So electric and gas will come to me about halfway through the month and tell me the amount that I owe. So I'm usually making a guess here. I know that some of these utilities will offer like a budget plan where they'll give you a consistent payment every month. And maybe I should look into doing that because I do like having a payment I know. But what I do in the meantime is I just estimate. So we'll just say I'm going to estimate my electricity will be 65 this month. My gas in late summer here will probably be very little, maybe $20. My water will be about 60, and my sewage is usually about the same. But I usually know the exact amount. So let's just say it's $62.17 for that one. Internet I know is $40. Cell phone is also 40. We actually pay this yearly, so I would be adding money throughout the year and then making a lump sum payment for that one. Apple One, I think, is 39. Insurance, let's just say it's about 100, and property taxes are going to be about 150. Okay, so that covers some of the big hitters here. These are going to be our true obligations, like we literally can't get out of paying these. And so we have those ones covered, including our mortgage, which is probably our highest one. Now, when we come down into the frequent, we're going to think about groceries. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to start with about 500 for groceries. Eating out, now that I'm budgeting, I'm going to try to be careful about this. We're going to say 75. School lunch, I'm going to put about 50 in there for now. Haircuts, we'll put 40. Transportation, we don't really have a lot of transportation costs. I'm just going to say 25 for now. First aid, we'll just throw $15 in there. And pet supplies, we'll throw in 35. Okay, so these ones, these frequent expenses, you may have some trouble coming up with an exact amount to place in here. This is going to come back later when we start prioritizing our categories and thinking about how much do I want to spend in these categories. I know they're obligations, but they have some wiggle room. So how much am I willing to put into these categories? And this is when you'll start thinking about, are there areas I can start cutting back on? Are we paying too much eating out, getting groceries? Are our haircuts too expensive? Could we do this cheaper if we just did it at home? That kind of thing. Okay, and then as we come down here, I know for gutter cleaning, we're going to do that usually once a year. So I'm just going to throw $10 in there. I'm going to put 20 in for auto maintenance. I'll put 50 in for home maintenance. The tires, I know I'm going to pay for those once every few years. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and throw $40 in. School supplies aren't really that much. I'll put 10 in there for now. Gifts are not an obligation. And then at this point, I've covered the things that I feel like I really need to get through the year. And I could come down here and say, okay, I'm just as part of my new budget, I'm gonna put $50 in each of these to get started. And of course, you can come back and reevaluate these ones later and decide what you want to do. But that's basically what we're doing in this step. We've already figured out how much money we have available. We are going um, to come in here and then add the things that we know we have to get through, and then we're going to use that money to fund those. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, you have three other loans here. You didn't add those. And that's totally true. I did not add those. So for that, I would probably go up to bills and I would add a matching category for these. So I could say, like, this is my insulation loan for adding insulation to my house. This is our auto loan. And this is our school loan. And I would just follow the same pattern. So I'd say, okay, what's my school loan payment? All right, it's $212.34. My auto loan is $399. And my insulation loan is quite cheap. It's only $199 for that. So that covers my obligations and leaves me with $94.41 of available money for everything else for now. Now, again, we've pretty much have funded what we need to get through the month right now. So that's a great start. So from here, any money that we're going to get paid, we start thinking about, is this going to go toward other things that we have in the budget right now, or are we going to start thinking about the next month? And so that's where step three will come in. We're going to figure out all the things we want to spend our money on now that we figured out the things we have to spend our money on. So that'll come in step three. So until then, have a great day.